Good morning, everybody. It's Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas, deep in the heart of the hill country, where everything is placid, peaceful, and calm. And the shelves of the HEB remain faithfully stocked. Although yesterday there was a bit of a run, I could tell on the more important supplies like toilet paper, disinfectant, things of that nature. Mostly the disinfectant. The disinfectant section was wiped out. There wasn't a lot of disinfectant left. Other than that, though, it's been a relatively safe and sane period of time, unlike other parts of the country, particularly Austin and San Antonio here in Texas, where they've experienced some manic shortages at places like Costco and Walmart and Target, certain HEBs, which is the big grocery store here in Texas. I was at Costco on Saturday night and about 45 minutes before closing. And I've never seen a Costco quite like that. Oh, guess who's coming? We must prepare. The Comet Jasper, asteroid Jasper is about to hit. Deep impact in 3, 2, 1. There it is. He doesn't disappoint. He has a little bit of a queasy stomach today, though. Jasper couldn't hold his morning food down. He had a little bit of a queasy stomach, so he's really going out of his way today to be on today's show. Let's give it up for Jasper. Queasy stomach and all. Good job, Jasper. So Costco on Saturday night was quite interesting. About 45 minutes before closing, I thought, hey, I'm going to get in here and kind of avoid maybe the crowd. It wasn't the case. It was really crowded, really, really crowded. And there was a kind of a subtle sense of unease or dis-ease, as it were, in the atmosphere. And of course, the essential items were gone, just blown out. No toilet paper, no alcohol, no almond milk, which I found to be interesting because Costco sells these cases of almond milk. You don't have to refrigerate them. You could just keep them in storage. And I think once you open them, you have to refrigerate them. But more than likely, if you open one, you're going to use one. That was gone. The rice was gone. All the rice was gone. And the isopropyl rubbing alcohol gone. Those are the kind of the high ticket items that I could see. They had a big run on butter. That was the other thing, because Costco sells the Kerrygold grass-fed butter, which is my butter of choice. And that was kind of wiped out, although there was still some left, but a lot of that was gone. Let me check in with Chatlandia. We got a lot to talk about today. Heck of a lot. All right, who do we have here? We got Charles. What's going on, Charles? The 300 day, 30th day of the year. Is that what we're talking about? Let's see. There's my man Steve. What's going on, Steve? There's Jennifer. There's Joan. There's Judy. What's going on, Judy? FUP77. Uncle Glenn. What's going on, Uncle Glenn? Joe Dimitri. There's Christy. Hey, Christy. Good to see you. Stock market up 666 points. I was going to talk about that. That's a really fascinating number, isn't it? 666. March 7th. Sun will be below the sun's horizon. Does this factor your analysts on March 7th? The 7 degrees, was it 7 degree sun would be below the sun's horizon? Yeah, I mean, there's obviously less theoretical light in the world. Maybe I'll tackle that tomorrow and do a more thorough analysis. What else do we have? Like the Parmalat, I bought some of that. No frog until you open. I don't get that. No frog. Okay. Reminds me of the ammo panic buy when Obama was elected. There was a lot of ammo buying when Obama was not only elected, but throughout his presidency. And if I'm not mistaken, I think either the government or somebody connected to the Obama administration actually had some stake in at least one or two of the ammo companies. So when there was a panic and where people said that this guy is going to detonate our rights, which for all intents and purposes, he kind of did. He kind of did that. Uh, they were actually making money off of the sale of ammo, big time money, because there was a lot being bought. So you bring up a very interesting point, Uncle Glenn, and I think there is the other side of that equation that they were actually, because this is what happens. I mean, whenever there's a crisis or disaster, somebody's always making money off of it, and that is part of one of the unfortunate consequences of being in the so-called Western world, where so-called capitalism is the system that most people use in order to transact. Uh, Speaking along those lines, why don't we get into the Super Tuesday from last night? Because that was a boy, oh boy. If I was a Bernie supporter, I would be so fucking pissed right now. I would be pissed. I would not be happy. It's very clear that Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg were asked to drop out of the race. And by dropping out of the race, their votes ostensibly went to Joe Biden and not Bernie Sanders. And no doubt, I think that they were compensated for their early withdrawal. I mean, they didn't even get to Super Tuesday. Now, I know Buttigieg might be sick, and that is something we looked at on Sunday night. Not a good time for Pete Buttigieg, by the way. Now, he's a Capricorn, and he'll survive. He'll get through it, and he's got all these connections with the CIA and a lot of the people that put Obama into office. So they'll keep him around. He's a cutout. He's a worthy candidate cutout. He's a high-level cutout that speaks, 5 or 6 languages. But they'll keep him around if he doesn't if they don't terminate the program. But they're probably, both he and Klobuchar are probably a lot more wealthy today than they were, say, over the weekend, because of their ejection from the Super Tuesday. You would think they'd want to go through Super Tuesday, but they were getting marching orders and they were getting zeros and ones put somewhere. Now, of course, they have ways of paying people that are not always, let's say, how shall we say, direct. For instance, they could have book deals. Book deals are always a great way to kind of launder money and make sure that people get some graft, so they can get book deals, and they get big advances for the book deals. Like, I could see Buttigieg getting like $2.5 million for a book deal. And then, of course, they make the books, and then nobody wants to buy them. So what do? They give them away to all the libraries across the country and count those as sales. Oh, look at all these sales. His book is on the New York Times bestseller list. Well, not really. Not really. Nobody's really bought the book. But libraries across America have the book. Same thing with Klobuchar. That's one way that they can grease the palm without it seeming too open and egregious. So who was the big winner last night? Of course, it's Joe Biden. Klobuchar and Buttigieg were big winners. They were really big winners. But their win doesn't show up on the tally sheet for delegates or even winning their own state. Like Klobuchar pulled out and Biden took her state. And there were, of course, a lot of last minute. What was this guy's name? Jim something. I think he's from Kentucky or Alabama or someplace like that. I don't know. It's like I follow this stuff to the best of my ability, but it's always such a moving target. That's sometimes it's hard to keep up with the players and the names. But it was a guy. He was, I think, a congressman or senator from the South, and he gave Biden a ringing endorsement. And he happened to be black, older, and then all of a sudden I'm reading, oh, Biden resonates with older black voters. Van Jones was talking about this last night. Biden resonates with older black voters because he has such a heartwarming rendition of his story around corn pop. I guess they could all kind of relate to Biden's rivalry with corn pop because they probably had a Joe Biden in their life somewhere that did the same thing to them. I think it's a bunch of bullshit, but I think that one of the things we have to really be concerned about if we have an election, by the way, is obviously the rigging of the election and Biden and Biden's people. And Biden's got some big backers. He's got big backers. So I think that they're quite good at rigging elections. Very good at rigging elections. So that's going to be one of the themes if we have an election in November is, again, how safe the elections are going to be and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Of course, the left or the Democrats will loudly complain about Trump and Trump being influenced by the Russians, and they're already doing that. Russia collusion and all this Russia bullshit, right? It's going to be interesting, very interesting. My sense is that Joe Biden will get the nomination in a brokered convention, and that he'll pick Michelle Obama as his running mate. And I don't think that's a very far out concept or theory or prognostication. There are a number of other people. It makes the most sense in a lot of ways. It gives him the most electable clout if he has Michelle Obama as his running mate. First of all, it's a continuation of the Obama legacy. People get very, very excited about that. That's one of the things that Trump would really need to pay attention to. So what I would try to do if I was Trump, this is where things are going to get interesting. Because let's just say that the election is at some level still somewhat real. And even though the process itself is ossified, there are still some ligaments in the process that are actually somewhat viable. You have to take that into account, especially with the Electoral College, which obviously separated Trump from Hillary Clinton, who was cheating, by the way, last time. A lot of people like to bring up the fact, well, she won the popular vote. Well, she won the popular vote because of states like California, New Mexico, Arizona, where there were pretty significant amounts of voter impropriety. So, again, they're good at this. But if I was Trump, I would put a lot of heat on Obama between now and the November election. I would do everything in my power to disable any attempt for the Obama administration to creep back into the White House on the back of senile, old weirdo, little girl adoring Uncle Joe Biden. Because that guy is about, I don't know, metaphorically 60 seconds away from expiring. Like Joe Biden is a temporary deal. He's a cutout, total cutout. So whoever is vice president for Joe Biden would likely wind up being president. That's my sense. And even perhaps even some form of collusion, corruption that might come up. But he just doesn't operate and function well as a human. He just doesn't. So whoever's vice president likely could wind up being president. So we have this thing about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. We're under the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which happens roughly every 20 years, right? That a president winds up getting killed. So we're coming up on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in November, end of November, beginning of December. And there's this given thought that Trump will win. And again, I've looked at his chart, and it'd be very hard for Trump to lose. Very, very hard for him to lose. That said, there's always the X factor involved. And a lot of people thought, well, if Trump's elected, he won't finish out his term because of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Well, what if Trump isn't elected? And what if somehow the tables are turned and we wind up having Joe Biden as president of the United States? That Jupiter-Saturn conjunction kicks in, and there's a good chance he's done. He's gone. And so the vice presidency becomes very, very important at that point. So don't rule out a Michelle Obama vice presidential nod. I think it's very, very plausible and would boost Biden's electability tremendously. Like he can't carry that ticket alone. And while I think Donald Trump would clean up with Biden on the debate space, he would clean him up. There's no doubt in my mind. I could see Joe Biden going into kind of a fitful old man rage, and because I've seen him do it. I've seen Biden go there. Just recently, there was a guy who was a vet in Iraq, and he pointed his finger at Biden. He said, you enabled that war. I lost my friends. I lost my fellow soldiers. I watched them die, and it's all on your watch." And Biden, of course, all politicians do this. Like there's two stages of the conversation. The first stage is empathy. Oh, I know. Oh, I sympathize with you. Yes. And then it gets close to the bone. And then when he gets close to the bone, empathy goes flying out the door. And it's like there are two responses then. You fire back or you turn away because they know in that moment they're not going to win that discussion. But I saw this, and Biden went after this guy and said, my son was in that war. Are you indicting my son? How do you think I feel? It's like, and then the guy, which is a very, very, it's a very disarming tactic in a lot of ways. And the guy kind of went, you could see these things when people interact. He kind of went back on his heel psychically because he had to get in touch with his humanity. And it's like he had to check his humanity at that point. He realized that this guy had a son in the war, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And then he lost his son, but the two aren't really connected in some ways. So then which is a really interesting thing in terms of like human interactivity. And like in that moment, they were kind of in the octagon together. And as you can see it's all over the internet, this interaction. And you can see just momentarily, like he's on the offensive with Biden. And Biden fires back with, my son was in the war, and he's lost his son, even though they're two distinctly different events, brain cancer and being in the war. Do you get brain cancer in the war? Maybe. Sometimes I even wonder if Biden's son is dead. Like, I wonder if he's dead. You always have to wonder these things. But let's just say for the sake of presentation that he is. So this guy gets knocked back on his heels psychically, and he has nothing to say. But then he eventually comes back. He kind of addresses Biden's concern. And then he comes back and he comes back at Biden and continues with his narrative. Not even his narrative, but his accusations, really. So in a situation like that, it's really, really important to be in the moment, right? To be in the moment. And I've been talking a lot about this idea of mindset, cultivating a mindset that allows you to really be in the moment. Now, we can't control everything. Control is kind of an illusion, but what we can control is certain vectors and how we might respond during certain situations. And we all have opportunities to do this, I'm involved in a certain thing in my life right now where I have to be completely detached from emotion. And it's been a really, really good teacher for me to take the emotion out of things. And the challenge with that is that when people take the emotion out of things, you can drift into psychopathy, because that's what the psychopaths do. They take the emotion out of everything, and then they're capable of anything when that happens. So you have to be very clear about your intent when you take the emotion out of something. You have to have really, really clear intent. Why are you doing it? Because when we take the emotion out of things, we run the risk of actually sacrificing our humanity. So this guy did fairly well. He managed to come back, but so that would have been something that I thought he did well, given the fact that Biden hit him with the familial tragedy. But it would have been really good to say, I'm really sorry for your loss. And does the loss of your son justify what you did in the war? Can you justify that? We all have losses, sir, but this is unexcusable, and that's not something you've ever answered and been held accountable for. And none of these people have, by the way, and that goes beyond Joe Biden. Obama has to be accountable for what's gone on in the Middle East, North Africa, Central Africa. The Bushes do. The Bushes are terrible. George W. Bush and the neocon cabal, they haven't had to answer to one goddamn charge or accusation. They're all just running around the world doing what they did, buying up land in Uruguay or Paraguay or wherever the Bush family owns millions of aquifers of fresh, clean, unadulterated water. They just get to roam the planet. Not one single serious look into what they did and what they've done and helping to create the world we live in now. All right, so let's get into some of the interesting pieces here. Let's see, what do we got? What do we got? Okay, this is what Uncle Glenn was talking about in Chatlandia. Best damn chat room on the internet. Yesterday's show got a lot of really, man, I got some views on yesterday's show. That was actually cool. I mean, normally we get about anywhere between 600 to 700. Yesterday's show was up around 1,500. So if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And say hello to the faithful in Chatlandia. Get to know some of these people. They're good people. The Biden bounce. Dow futures up 666. You can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. As traders forget about panicking Fed. Woo! The Biden bounce. This whole thing, I mean, the entire market is just algorithmically rigged. I mean, again, this is the ghost in the machine. Computers are controlling the whole damn thing. As investors decided to forget all about the Fed's panicked emergency rate cut and instead took solace from the surprising Biden bounce. Surprising? It's not that surprising. During Super Tuesday, which saw Bernie's odds for re-election, this is a terribly written, not re-election. Bernie was never elected. Bernie's odds for election. Come on, Zero Hedge. Do better. Crash. Shelving risks of a socialist America. Whoops. Got to go back there. Sorry. Shelving risks of a socialist America, while expectations of an even more forceful global policy responses for the coronavirus kept hopes alive that central banks are just getting started. Great. Our good friends, the central banks. Biden, a non-socialist moderate. What does Biden believe in anyway? He'll say anything. Is as less likely to raise taxes because we know the rich, fat cat Democrats and even Republicans would rally around somebody who's not going to raise their taxes and impose new financial regulations when primaries in 9 states that set up a one-on-one battle for the Democratic presidential nomination. Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders. In Europe, the Stoxx 600 gained 1.5% on course for third straight days of gains. Markets in Frankfurt, London, and Paris gained a similar amount. After the action from the Fed, the market is very, very watchful now for potential moves from other central banks, said CIBC FX strategist Jeremy Stretch. On Wall Street, the S&P 500 futures climbed to 1.8% on Biden showing after falling on Tuesday overnight despite the Fed's rate cut. So, I mean, you can look at this kind of comparison contrast. that the Fed is somehow, working for Trump. That's not really true. The Fed is independent of Trump. It's independent of any government. So whether or not Trump is in office or Obama's in office or Lady Gaga's in office, the Fed will do its thing. So you can't really say, well, this is what Trump did, and it didn't really respond. Oh, when Biden did well, this is what happened. But they want you to think that, right? They want you to get that in your head. So you go, oh, Biden's positive. It's like Pavlovian, right? So it's just Pavlovian. Markets in the region were mixed, with Jakarta Composite and South Korea's KOSPI gained 2% on 9.8 billion government stimulus package to mitigate the coronavirus. So now you have governments getting involved, mitigating the coronavirus, and it impacting the markets positively. Here we go. There's a little problem reaction solution for you right there. Anyway, this whole thing just smells, stinks, and I love the fact that the futures are up 666. Isn't that just that's just so symbolic in a lot of ways. The B system rallied, rallied around the Mr. Scorpio, Joe Biden, sun in the 12th house. Who is he? What is he really capable of? What is he really doing? I'll tell you what he's doing in California. Here's the latest of Biden's, how shall we say, affectionate demonstrations to young girls in his space. There he is. Watch him here. Watch what he does. Okay, here he goes. Ooh. Smell the baby. Smell the baby. What does the baby do? He said, watch the baby. Oh, yeah. Is this guy creepy or what? Turns away. It's like, get away from me, boomer. And look at it. They're all like smiles and giggles. Oh, we love him. We love him. Oh, isn't that? Look at that little girl wants nothing to do with Biden. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. The smiles and giggles and smiles and giggles. Look at that creep. Oh, yeah. It's like he's blowing in her fucking ear. He's like coming on to her. Man, this is weird. Nobody gets it. Nobody sees this. To me, this is one of the biggest problems that we face in this country and in this world, is that all these people are fucking asleep. Look at them. They're just all so happy and smiles and giggles. And isn't this great? Meet me later. I'll get your number from your mother. Well, this is just so bizarre. Look at him. Look at it here. Look at this look right here. Look at this look. Look at that look. Let's just study Biden's face for a moment here. Let's blow this shit up. Look at that look. Oh, that's some creepy old man Skeletor shit. Look at him. Look at the look on that face. Oh, and she's just all happy. Oh, she's so thrilled to be there. Let's see what else we got. That was the look right there. Let me see if there's anything else that we need to. Comes in with a smile. Gives it to a grimace. Look at him. Look at those eyes. He's staring like directly into that baby's eyes. Who do you think is really looking at that baby? I'm not sure it's Joe Biden. Not sure it's Joe Biden. Let's see. Is there any other facial tells here that we can gain anything from? Here he's coming in now. He's making his move. Biden's making the move. Here he comes. Oh, you smell like a fresh baby. And then he blows in her ear. Look at that. Oh. He's like the fucking Pope here, isn't he? This is like a Pope move. And the little girl turns away, like, I don't want anything to do with you, dude. Nothing to do with you. Good for you, kid. He's got his hand on her back. That is just so inappropriate. Get your hands off my kid, you perv. And he comes out of there and he's looking at her. He's trying to read her. It's like, do you think she's into me? Do you think she's into me? She might be into me. He comes back. Then he looks around like, okay, who's looking at me? How can I pose for something? Oh, look at her. She's like having this is like her audience with the Pope. Look at that beatitude. Look at that beatitude. She's just so happy to be in his presence. Look at that. We live in such a weird cult of personality society. Like how anybody could even remotely think that this guy has his marbles together is just beyond me. I guess it's anything but Trump. Here's the gal with the very hip, trendy glasses, wearing the kind of the revolutionary shirt. Kind of looks like my shirt in some ways, a little bit. Anyway, here you go. There's your Joe Biden moment. Embarrassing, totally embarrassing. Jesus, I can't believe that people actually vote for this guy. I'm telling you, the Democrats are going to be pissed. The Bernie socialists, they're going to be so pissed. They're already pissed, man. They're getting fucked over again. They're going to have a convention in Milwaukee, and I expect full-scale riots in Milwaukee. I expect it. And you know what? They deserve it. They totally deserve it. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh, all right. I'm going to play this one later. I got a lot of visuals for you guys today. A lot of visuals. So that is kind of where we are with the whole Super Tuesday thing and the debacle of Super Tuesday. Again, if you are a Biden supporter, you're loving it. And if you are a Bernie person and see Bernie as the hope and the dream for a new and better and more fair and just world, that was not a good night for you at all. Not a good night. Okay, I want to give you guys some Corona updates and some interesting information here around Corona. And this is something that I've been suspecting. So let me give you some really interesting news. So this is from the dailymail.com. That apparently there are two strains of coronavirus that are going around the world. And 70% of the infected patients have caught the more aggressive and contagious type. This is interesting. So we're starting to get some intel now. And this is what's starting to come in. Now, I know people who've been deathly sick, but they have not gone to hospital. They've not been intubated. They've not been put on a ventilator, but they do show symptoms that very much sound like some form of corona. Deep, heavy coughing, consistent deep, heavy coughing, lethargy, night sweats, hacking up like, white loads of mucus, large amounts, right? So this is some of the symptoms that people are experiencing. In a lot of ways, very unlike any other cold or flu or virus they've had. So I do think that we're dealing with two types of corona. Now, if you look on, corona is not something that's necessarily uncommon. If you look on Lysol, you'll see that it actually defeats corona. What's different about this version is what they did in the sequencing of it. So let me just continue to read this. The coronavirus has mutated into at least two separate strains since the outbreak began in December, according to Chinese scientists, if you can believe them. Researchers say there are now two types of the same coronavirus infecting people, and most people seem to have caught the most aggressive form of it. At least 94,000 people have been affected around the world, and almost 3,200 have died, with 50,000 have recovered from the disease for now. The team of experts from Beijing and Shanghai says 70% of people have caught the most aggressive strain of the virus that causes such bad illness that it has struggled to spread since early January. Now, an older, milder strain seems becoming more common. So we have these two versions of coronavirus that are floating around in the system, which can be very confusing, especially if you test for, let's say, the milder strain, which will keep you laid up for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and you might be able to recover. But then there's the other strain, which is way more but way more deadly. So it's going to be very hard to sort out because they're all probably showing up as kind of maybe one version of corona with the tests, wherever the tests are being given, and they're not being given that much. Knowing that the virus can mutate may make it harder to keep track of or to treat. That's true. And raises the prospect that recovered patients could be reinfected. Raises the prospects they have been. They have been reinfected. The experts cautioned that the study that discovered the mutation only used a tiny amount of data, 103 samples, so more research is needed. And another scientist added that it is normal for viruses to change when they jump from animals to humans. Well, that's bullshit, because this was not something that jumped from a bat and then somebody ate bat soup. So here we go. Here's your worldwide cases so far, 3,204 deaths. That's an estimation. I don't think that's an exact figure. So here we go. This is Kirkland. Washington's got the worst of this stuff, by the way. The research was done by experts at Peking University in Beijing, Shanghai University, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Let's just say that the trust factor with China is broken, really broken. Like if that represented a relationship, right? That person in the relationship would have lied to you constantly, over and over and over and over again, withheld information with you over and over and over again, no matter how bad you needed that person or how great the sex was, that is almost beyond repair, because we can't trust them at any level. And that should be a lesson moving forward, by the way. Whatever happens with this corona pandemic, the Chinese, I'm sorry, they just can't be trusted. Not many governments can be trusted. I'm not being exclusionary, but I think China really needs to come under greater scrutiny, much greater scrutiny. Whatever happens moving forward, man, this relationship has got to change. It's got to change. It's like we're breaking up with China. We're breaking up with China. China, it's been nice. It's been really nice. You were a friend with benefits, China. Very good benefits. We got a lot of cheap shit from you. You made a lot of people really, really rich. You changed the social economy and topography of this country. You were a friend with very deep benefits. But China, we have to break up. We have to break up, China. It's one of those periods, like when you break up with somebody, like it's really not very good to get into a new relationship when you break up with somebody. You got to figure out what the fuck happened. Like, why did I bring this person into my life? What did I do? How did they get there? And, let me find out more about me for a while. Let me get into me for a bit. Because if I'm going to have another relationship, I need to have maybe a bit of a different relationship. Maybe a long-standing, long-lasting relationship where both parties equally mutually benefit from one another in an organic, analog sort of way. So China, we're breaking up with you. This is the breakup moment. China also now has shown that it has a transmittable disease. That's like finding out that your lover or your partner has gonorrhea or syphilis, right? Oh, China, sorry, you've got a major STD, and we got to break up with you. This could be because the disease it causes is less severe, meaning people carry it for longer before ending up in a hospital, increasing the risk of them passing it on. In the paper, the researchers led by Professor Jian Liu and Dr. Ji Cui said, whereas the L type was more prevalent in the early stage of the outbreak in Wuhan, the frequency of the L type decreased after January 2020. Human intervention may have placed more severe selective pressure on the L type, which might be more aggressive and spread more quickly. On the other hand, the S type, which is evolutionarily older and less aggressive, might have increased in relative frequency due to relatively weaker selective pressure. The scientists' explanation suggests that the L strain surged at the beginning of the outbreak and made people so ill who caught it were quickly diagnosed and isolated, meaning it had less opportunity to spread widely. The human intervention is thought to be the hospitalization of people with the virus and the lockdown of areas it was spreading fast. There it is. Corona, the redheaded stepchild, the redheaded virus. Look at that. These little things just hook right into your blood cells. They hook right in, start desiccating you from the inside out. Then there's this guy, another really trustworthy individual running things at a global level. This guy's a crook. He's corrupt. Bad dude. Tedros, bad dude. Bad dude. If people with a certain strain of the virus are taken into hospital faster than those with another strain, this limits the number of other people that the strain can infect. So this is actually, I think, partially good news that we're dealing with two strains currently, and one that is going to make you really sick, and another that could kill you. And then look, I think we need to be aware of the second strain, and we also need to be aware of how the strains can mutate and maybe cross again and find one another. Now, there's a lot of talk about 5G and how 5G might have played a role in activating and setting this version of Corona off. And that's a distinct possibility, very distinct possibility. I still think that that there is an AI factor with the strain of coronavirus, and that comes courtesy of Charles Lieber over at Harvard. And I think it was Cosmic Lover, aka Purple, over on Twitter, who sent me some stuff on Lieber and his work. It's kind of scary, frightening stuff. And I'll try to crack that open maybe later today, and we can maybe visit that tomorrow. So perhaps 5G had played a significant role in mutating the Wuhan virus or the coronavirus in the early stages, and basically getting people to drop dead. Now, there was another bizarre video making the rounds yesterday. I'll have to fire this thing up here. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Where to go? Hold on. Nope. Let's see. I just had this thing. It was a guy in New York who just drops dead. I mean, he just drops dead. And they're walking around. He's Asian, more than likely Chinese. Let me see if I can find this thing. Here it is. You got to see this. This is in New York. This is in New York. And what city is this? Is it Flushing? Let me just see here. Hold on. What, Jasper? What do you have to say? Yeah. What do you feel about this? Jasper's really rebounded from a little shaky stomach today. I'm proud of you, Jasper. Very proud of you. You are such a trooper. Yeah. Yeah, I know. He's talkative today. He's got a lot to say. All right, let me see if I can find the city here. You got to see this though. This is gonna make you, kind of revision some things and rethink some things. Here we go. This is ran across this yesterday. So watch this. This is New York. Now, apparently, what is it? It's not White Plains. It might be Flushing. This guy just drops like a rock. He just drops like a rock. Now you're saying, okay, well, anybody could drop. It's interesting. He's got two different colored shoes, and there's apparently a large Asian population here, right? Large Asian population, but this is definitely New York City, and these are your first responders without any kind of gloves, without any kind of masks, which is a bad move. This is just a really don't get down by the guy's face. Oh, here, let me take a cell phone photo. Maybe you just like prop the guy up and pose in a selfie with him, like Weekend at Bernie's or something like that. Look at that person. You know, this is not a time necessarily for good Samaritans. Now, what happens is that the trucks arrive, right? Ambulance, and they bring him out of there. But it's like, holy shit, you know why? And there's another image of the guy here. And he's just laid out. Now you could say, well, maybe he's a crisis actor. That'd be a good crisis actor gig, wouldn't it? You just have to lay down and pretend that you're dead until people show up. He's got a mask on, by the way. This is just recently. This is 18 hours ago. Here they are. They're showing up now. They're pulling him out of there. Of course, nobody's wearing any protective clothing, nothing whatsoever. Here's another. There, hey, let's get down there. We don't have any fucking masks. We're New Yorkers. We don't need any masks. We don't need any masks. We're so tough. This shit just bounces off of us. We don't need no stinking masks. Jeez. Good luck on that. Good luck on that. So again, I'm not showing this to you so that you can. Oh, look, his sunglasses are still. Oh, he's tilting his head up. He's looking around. He's looking around. Oh. He's like, is anybody watching me? What's going on here? I can't get up. The dude is flat out, though. He's down. He's down for the count. He might be a crisis actor. Look at that. That's interesting, right? It's like the Chinese flag. I think it's very funny in a lot of ways. Not a laughable matter to that guy who is sprawled out on the sidewalks in New York. So again, just take precautions. Don't do anything out of, you don't, just personal hygiene. Take care of yourself. Take care of your environment. Take care of your space. Take care of your body. I've been looking into some really interesting supplements that seem to be, again, quite helpful, not just against corona, but immunity in general. Like I've been reading great things about selenium. So I got a little selenium. By the way, copper is disappearing, which is really interesting. We were talking about copper yesterday. It's disappearing. I did manage to get some nano copper. I'm getting that, I think, in a day or two. So I'm looking forward to it. But check out copper and check out selenium. Selenium seems to be quite good in terms of building overall immunity. Okay. Just take care of yourself. But there are things happening now on a larger scale and a larger level that are a bit troubling. They're having to stare down the NCAA basketball tournament, also known as March Madness. It is coming. And the NCAA is trying to figure out what to do. They're saying, okay, we're going to have games as scheduled. People from all over the world will be there. People will congregate, mix, do all the things that people do in an environment like that. And this is a big tournament. It's happening all around the country. Big tournament. And it happens regionally, and then it goes into the like the super regional, and then of course the super regional areas, then the finals. It's one of the biggest sporting events of the year, and it's significant. And the NCAA is trying to figure out what to do. Speaking of the NCAA in college basketball, Chicago State, which is a small university in Chicago, has suspended its last two games. So both their women's team and their men's team are not playing out their schedule. And when we look at Italy, Italy has suspended all play for their Italian Professional Soccer League, and they're kind of in the playoff run. And earlier on, they were playing in empty stadiums. You're going to see more of this. And even England now is talking about, like, shutting down for a large period of time. I do think we need to be cautious about this. And I think there's something bigger at work. People keep saying, well, there's more to this. Of course, there's more to this. Of course, there's more. In an environment where we're already having a large degree of alienation and antipathy towards one another, the coronavirus forces us further, in some ways, into our own shell or into our own kind of quarantine emotional space, which makes it much more difficult in a lot of ways to have things like warmth and kindness and compassion and conviviality. You know, it takes us this whole what the challenge about what's going on with Corona, both real, perceived, projected, and imagined, is that it takes us down on the lower rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It takes us down into those survival rungs. And that's not where the human spirit really flowers. But in a lot of ways, it's also kind of commensurate with where we are with like the fourth turning, which I've talked about quite a bit. Like, this is the winter of America, and it's the winter of the planet. So this is not some kind of flowering time. This is not some kind of flowering renaissance where everything is flowing and glowing and sprouting and creative, fecundated with fertility and possibility. This is not that time. And in some ways, what we're seeing here really matches this kind of going within energy that we've been dealing with now for a while. And people are so isolated and so alienated. And this thing with Bernie Sanders and the election or Super Tuesday is not going to help. It's going to create more antipathy, more frustration, more resentment, more okay boomer. And I got to say, if I was a Gen Z or I was a millennial and I saw a bunch of people who were in their 70s, some of which can't even complete a fucking sentence, I would be pissed off. Like, these are the people that are making the decisions for my generation. It doesn't really work because you're going to be gone and we're going to be stuck with whatever it is you're creating and theoretically leaving behind. I get that totally. I would be angry. I would have a beef, total beef. And the problem is that we when we deal with the progression and succession of life, like when you get to a certain age, you're supposed to be able to be a role model, or you're supposed to be able to be kind of the sage pillar of advice. And that's what experience and wisdom we're supposed to bring to the table. And when we look around at these so-called elders, they're fucking nuts and out of their minds. They're not icons of stability. They're just not. And even Bernie Sanders, who, has promises some hope. Bernie Sanders is like the grandpa. He's like the grandpa that used to like to be around. He's like the grandpa that would take you down to the 7-Eleven and buy you a Slurpee and give you some little spending money on the side so you could play video games or some shit like that. That's why they like Bernie Sanders. He's grandpa. They don't like Trump because he's dad. Even though they're kind of similar in age, Bernie being a bit older, I think Bernie's born 1942. Think about that. They don't like Trump because he's dad. No, dad has limits. They don't like that. Bernie's like, unconditional love. Does the grandpa thing. But still, it's like, this is not a generation that has aged, in some ways, aged really well. It is not. And when they do try to be wise and sylvan, in their expression, they fail miserably. They really fail miserably. And even if they had the best message, I don't think a lot of millennials and some of the Gen Zs would be willing to listen to it anyway, because that's just the nature of youth. Youth has to go through its own process of maturation. I mean, when I was in my 20s, well, it's interesting. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, up until about 2021, I thought I knew everything. Oh, yeah, I was just so fucking smart. And then around 21, my world imploded. in a pretty significant way. And then I had this kind of rebirth experience, and I realized how little I knew, which was very humbling, but very good for me. But that's what youth does. They have to go through that. But this is a time now where it's so severe. It's even more severe than the 1960s, where we really saw a lot of that. So I do think, in a lot of ways, this older generation has failed our youth because they haven't provided real, solid wisdom. In wisdom, like nobody there is solid. They're just not. They're not. And then you have Mike Bloomberg. The guy got 4 delegates. He won American Samoa. He spends $1 million a day in his campaign, bashing Trump, having super slick ads, and he got 4 votes in American Samoa. That campaign is over. And again, are we supposed to look at Mike Bloomberg as being this guy that the youth can kind of get behind and rally behind? The other issue with the youth is that, unfortunately, there's been a lot of programming and a lot of indoctrination with the youth. So you could even have somebody who could be wise and well-intentioned, and I'm not sure they would ultimately get it. Like, we're kind of staring down a childhood's end sort of reality, if you know what I'm saying. It's going to be interesting. But getting back to this kind of isolation piece with Corona, I think it's really bad. And I also have thoughts about actually being in public and actually being around a bunch of people that are sick or contagious. There's just not enough information right now. And so I think erring on the side of caution is good. But on the other hand, too much isolation is not good for us. It's just not good. All right, let me get into another interesting wrinkle and piece around Corona that I think is, again, kind of at the heart of what's taking place. And let me see if I can grab the story that I'm looking for. Yeah. Again, courtesy of Zero Hedge, one more time. We have this story, which I think is really at the heart of everything. And I talked about the reset yesterday, and I talked about it from like the Tartarian aspect, which I think is actually quite valid. But there's also the financial and the monetary reset piece. Here's the headline: Who urges people to go cashless? Because dirty banknotes can spread the virus. So, we've been talking about this, and you guys are switched on. And this is another part of the social engineering that's taking place. Not just that we separate ourselves and isolate ourselves out more, which actually might be, at this stage, it might be a good practice, at least until we get more information around this virus and really try to understand and comprehend the extent and scope of it, and especially the 2 competing strains that seem to be circulating in our environment. But then there's the other factor, like the social programming factor, which has to do with money, resetting the economy, crashing the supply chain, things like that, so that we can move into this digital currency. I'm just going to read this here. Following reports that Beijing had quarantined dirty cash, the WHO warned on Monday that the virus could survive on banknotes, potentially spreading COVID-19 within communities and across the world. To reduce the risk of being infected by money, the NGO advised citizens in countries struggling with outbreaks to favor digital payments when possible. That the WHO is telling the public to avoid cash is hardly a surprise. Research has found that coronaviruses have been found to live on surfaces for at least 9 days. During the statement, a WHO spokesman referenced a Bank of England study. Oh, there we go. There's an institution that we can all trust, claiming that banknotes can carry bacteria or viruses, and urged people to wash their hands. Other studies have shown that 90% of the US dollar bills had bacteria present. In one Swiss study, found that viruses had survived on the faces of Swiss francs for days. The WHO's warnings follow the People's Bank of China last month started disinfecting currency deposited at Chinese banks using ultraviolet light. That's not a bad idea, actually. You should look into ultraviolet lights in general. Brits and other fellow Europeans should be increasingly careful as the virus spreads across Europe, the WHO warned via the Telegraph. We know that money changes hands frequently and can pick up all sorts of bacteria and viruses. This has been going on for years. This is, what's living on bills of exchange or notes of exchange has been going on for years. But now this could be a time where they could seriously politicize this and begin to indoctrinate a new system. So I think these are things that we need to be aware of. And whether or not you believe the coronavirus is real, legit, valid, a psyop, a big nothing burger, I personally don't think it's a big nothing burger. Is it going to kill half the planet? Based on kind of what I'm seeing and these two strains of coronavirus that are running simultaneously, I don't think that's going to be the case. Could you get really, really sick? Yes, you could get really sick. Could the virus mutate? Yes, it could mutate. And then what are you doing at that point? Right? So I don't think we should just treat this as a big nothing burger. I also don't think we should treat this as an ELE or an extinction level event. That's my piece. So I think, just be conscious of what you're putting in your body, your level of cleanliness and all that other stuff, and your thoughts as well. This is really important. And I kind of rigorously work on this stuff inside of myself and try to filter out the stuff that I want to latch onto or think I should latch onto or could latch onto, which seems dire or dramatic. And I process that stuff and work through it so it doesn't stick to me. And at the same time, I also am processing this oh, la-di-da-di-da, everything's going to be well. And, just kind of the head in the sand thinking. And I think that could be a real mistake as well. So somewhere in between, just hitting that sweet spot, the zone where you're kind of aware of a number of different realities. And that's the way you should be anyway, theoretically. Just be aware of these different realities that are kind of swirling around you and figure out how you're going to interact with them. Having more information can be very helpful. It makes you more informed. It can also be information overload. So be selective at times. Try to find sources you trust. I know a lot of you guys like Jon Rappoport. I think John's got some really good things to bring to the table about immunity and 5G and the quality of the air and the quality of the food and how it lowers immunity and all. And that's all very, very important stuff. File that away. And I know that a lot of you also are busy. You don't have the time to do the research or you've got lives. Well, that's why I'm here, because I really don't have a life outside of this, which is kind of good. It's kind of good. I'm very, very dedicated and focused. I'm here for you. I think that's probably it for Corona for today, theoretically. I think that's all I have. I just, again, just be aware of the social engineering components around it. That's really important. Even when you do things like prepping and that's really important too. It's really important. Just be aware of the social engineering components. That doesn't mean you say, oh, I'm fine. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And, if the shit hits the fan and, hey, they're going to take care of us. It's a bad strategy as well. All right. I'd like to leave you with something positive today. I think I will, but not before I take you to another piece of video that really grabbed my attention. Before I do that, though, let me check in with Chatlandia as we begin to wrap up today's show. Chatlandia, where are you at? Chatlandia? Let's see. What do we have here? No one wants to be the president anymore, including Trump. That's a very interesting statement, Cato. Christine, can you hold a class for us? What kind of class are we talking about? Remove yourself from the slave matrix. 99% of humanity won't do it. Private trust bond. Sure. So what's really interesting, and I hold on to see Robert Phoenix. No, thank you. I don't want to be president. I saw some photos of coronavirus patients in China. Very happy, very heavy coating on the tongue. It is definitely real, not just 5G. I agree with you, Masaki. I think that we got to be on our game with this, really on our game with this. Let's see. I realized how little I knew. Lisa says, I realized how little I knew in 2014 at the age of 42. Shook the ego to the core, which was great, been doing the shadow work and healing ever since. I think that that's really important. Let's see what else we have here. The corona response in Seattle is worse than the third world. If coronavirus affects elders most, think how much money from Social Security and Medicare would be saved. That's always been a government goal. You're absolutely right, Bonnie. There's no, there's no, how do I say this? Okay, I think people that are older, obviously their immunity can be impacted more because they're older and their organs have been around a long time. So actually having strong organs can be, or young organs can be quite helpful. And again, that's another kind of shakeout of this deal, right? You've got Social Security, and you've got a whole big wave of people now that are starting to hit the Social Security rolls. But what else do they have? This is a group of people, again, sort of, and there are people that are not boomers that are still around. Like my mother is not a boomer. My mother was born with Pluto and Cancer. So she's not a boomer. Technically, she is not a boomer. She was born in 1938. That's pre-boom. The baby boom happens after the war, right? So guys come back in 1945 and start having babies. That's when the baby boom happens. That's why they're called boomers. And that's when Pluto's in Leo. But there are a lot of people that are my mother's age and they're still around. And that group with Pluto and Cancer and even the baby boomers, they have a lot of wealth, a lot of personal wealth. They have a lot of personal holdings. They've got land, they've got houses, they've got bank accounts, they've got 401ks, they've got all this stuff, right, that they're holding on to. And, theoretically would have some kind of generational pass down or pass through. Now, I think that they could use a virus like coronavirus to level the playing field and wipe all that out quite easily. It's like when Katrina happened in New Orleans, which I should do a show on Katrina one of these days. What a clusterfuck and psyop that was. Anyway, but what happened is that they went in and they basically started taking houses away from a number of these wards. And by the way, downtown New Orleans was not hit by Katrina. They blew the levees on some of these wards. What was it, the 4th ward or the 5th ward or whatever? And they just ruined these neighborhoods. They flushed these people out. They ran down to the Superdome. They bust them out to Houston and all these other places. And what happened to their property? It got taken from them, right? It got taken from them. This was generational housing. These are people that were never going to leave their homes. Like they'd had their homes for the last 50, 60 years. Maybe their parents even had the home and gave it to them. You think that they would sell their home? No, they would give their home to their kids. And the way that the global economy works, that doesn't work. They don't like that. So removing or having a crisis to remove personal wealth would be a very, how should I say this, efficient way to put a cap on an era. So that's another part of the story as well. All right. I do want to show you one final thing before I get out of here today. Something that slightly dismayed me yesterday. And really, it's like I don't often get to this point where I kind of feel embarrassed to be a human. But I saw this video yesterday, and it was getting kind of close. It's getting kind of close. Let me set it up for you. California passed this thing called Proposition 47, which essentially states that if you steal under $950 worth of merchandise, that it would be considered a misdemeanor, and you'll get a ticket, just like jaywalking. That's if the cops show up. And if you get the ticket, there's a really good chance that you won't show up. Why would you show up? You wouldn't, because the system won't give a shit. And now that Chesa Boudin, who is the DA of San Francisco, he's aiding, enabling, and abetting the type of behavior that I'm about to show you. I'll set the scene for you. The video takes place in a Walgreens in San Francisco. And you're going to see the outcome of a law like Prop 47, which was intended, by the way, to support the homeless. Oh, the homeless don't have things. They need things like food and daily living supplies, and they can't afford anything. So we're going to look the other way when it comes to them actually having to pilfer their everyday. And this is $9.50 a day. You can steal under $9.50 a day. Like, there's a limit. It's like a credit card limit. You know, it's like they've got a limit that they can't rip off more than any day. So the next day it comes and there's that $950 limit, which is just insane. Let me just show you the outcome of this. This is a very recent video that I ran across, and quite disturbing. This is the future California, and this is the future of the West in a lot of ways. Watch this. Remember, this is a Walgreens. Here we go. They're just emptying the shelves. Just walking right out. Then there's this dodo bird. I have no idea what's going on with her. Now, what's interesting is they put these videos up here because they wanted to kind of obscure the view of the end there. They're all wearing coronavirus masks, by the way. At least they're not going to spread their contagion while they're emptying Walgreens of their cheap fucking cosmetics. See, this is unfortunate now. California has opened the vault. And if you're living in California, you really may want to reconsider that. You may want to reconsider that. You may want to reconsider living there. But please, if you come to Texas, do not bring that kind of mentality which enabled that to happen to Texas. Please. It's already getting a little shaky as it is. But I don't think that is an outlier. I do think it's a sign of things to come as we deal with the breakdown of the social fabric and the social contract in a lot of ways. Now, I'm not a big proponent of heavy duty rules and regulations. I'm less government is better. But in order for us to have some semblance of freedom, we also have to have equal amounts of responsibility. And that has been lost on the red flag minions of the state of California. And don't think that would not be something that would be instituted on a national level. It could very well be. Very well be. And then we're dealing with just, it's not even anarchy. There's anarchy, you've got to be responsible with anarchy. True anarchy is true responsibility in a lot of ways. That's not even anarchy. That's larceny, that's theft, that's thievery, has nothing to do with anarchy at all. Now, I'm not losing any sleep for the cosmetics companies, or even Walgreens for that matter. But it is indicative of a certain turn in our culture, and it's not a turn for the better. Not a turn for the better. All right. What is a turn for the better? Your life, who you are, and making those choices every single day that allow you to be a better, more functional, more whole person in your life and in the lives of other people in your world. I was over on Michael Jones's site, and Logos Rising is getting ready to come out, and it's going to be Michael's most ambitious work to date. And I got on the list so that I'm notified when the book comes out, because I want to get a copy of it. And somebody asked me, can you explain Logos more? I think it was on maybe the Sunday night show. I'm going to hold that discussion off a bit until Michael's book comes out. And then I'm going to bring Michael onto the show. And he's always been a very welcome, gracious, very intelligent guest. And we'll dive into the logos piece in a big way. And I think that's where we're getting to. And that's when we remove the layers. You know, when we sand down the veneer, the logos piece is starting to emerge. And that is the divine intelligence that operates in and through each and one of our lives and allows us to be a conduit of this divine dispensation and agents of it as well. All right, let me go back into Chatlandia really quickly. Take your pulse one more time before I'm out of here. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Your freedom is directly proportional to your morality. I agree. I agree, Christine. What else do we have? That is a recipe for total chaos. Yep. You're right, Maury. Happens all the time. Grocery baskets full of groceries, and they go right out the front door. And the manager's nothing, tells employees to do nothing, while the rest of us stand in line to pay. Yep. Mary, I've moved to Texas 2 years ago. Love the Texas ways. The only thing I can say about California is the weather. I loved California. I grew up there. And I had great times there. We have so many homeless in LA. This is Masaki. Going to be something when plagues run through the encampments. It'll be ugly. Stephen says, I've seen some interesting correspondences between those who matured in 1968, like me, and those who matured in 2001. Uncle Glenn says, saw that video, couldn't believe how far America has fallen. You know, that's really the big piece. That's really the big piece. This used to be a place in the country where people took pride. They took pride in what they had. They took pride in what they did. They took pride in their surroundings because it was an extension of who they are or were. It was an expression of their character. And in a lot of ways, it was their relationship with God. You treated all things like it was God or like they were God. And you had respect for all things. You had respect for all people, unless, of course, they proved otherwise, in which case you would move your level of respect and disengage from those people. And that was part of the American story. America was never perfect. A lot of flaws in the system. But by and large, it's been an interesting study in character. And the character has been assaulted and diluted and damaged and corrupted. And we're kind of walking around like a wounded animal in a lot of ways. And here comes Corona, which is again going to threaten in some ways our level of humanity and how we can stay human in an environment that demands that you be engaged in some level of survival. That anything over and above that level of survival, which is love and creativity and consciousness, takes a back seat. You know, it's real like first chakra stuff, man. You know, we're being taken right down into the first chakra. And that's not always a good thing. I think it's good to, you know, be able to take care of business, but you don't want to live there all the time. You know, you don't want to live in your bunker all the time. All right, I'm out of here. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to save what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I went a little long today, but a lot to cover. Have yourself a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. Oh, if you feel like subscribing to this show, there is instructions. There will be at the bottom of the show page. So until tomorrow, take good care.